Two people can earn the exact same salary for 20 years and end up in completely different financial worlds. Not because one got lucky, not because one had a secret investment tip. The real difference usually isn't visible on a resume or a bank statement. It's happening somewhere you'd never think to look. Inside how your brain quietly processes money, decisions, and time thousands of times a day without either of them noticing. Today, we're going through 12 of those invisible patterns, and one of them, right in the middle of this list, is the one that determines whether your brain treats a dollar today as more valuable than a dollar next year, or the other way around. That single wiring difference might be the biggest predictor of long-term wealth there is. Let's start with the first one, because it happens the second money hits your account. Most people's brains do something automatic the moment income arrives. They start mentally assigning it before it even lands. Rent, groceries, that subscription you forgot about. By the time the money actually shows up, it's already spoken for. People who build wealth quietly tend to run a different script. A portion of every dollar gets claimed by their future self before anything else gets a vote. There's a real psychological concept behind this. Researchers who study how connected people feel to their future selves have found something striking. The more real your future self feels to you emotionally, the easier it becomes to make sacrifices for them today. If your future self feels like a stranger, you'll spend like you're never going to meet them. If they feel like someone real, you start saving like you're taking care of family. The habit itself is almost embarrassingly simple. The moment money arrives, move a slice of it somewhere untouchable before you make a single spending decision. Not after bills, not after whatever's left. First. Here's something most people never think about. Spending money today requires almost zero effort. One tap, one face scan, done. Your brain, however, was built for a world where getting resources took real work. That mismatch is a problem, and companies know it. An entire industry exists purely to remove friction from spending, because less friction means more purchases. Every buy now button, every saved card, every one-click checkout is engineered specifically to beat your rational brain to the decision. Wealth-conscious people often do the opposite on purpose. They delete saved payment info, they give themselves a 48-hour rule before any non-essential purchase over a certain amount, they physically remove shopping apps from their home screen. None of these changes look like much individually, but they buy your slower, more rational brain enough time to catch up to your impulsive one. Almost nothing feels urgent after 48 hours. Almost everything feels urgent in the moment. Imagine someone quietly withdrew 20% of your savings account every single day. You'd notice immediately. You'd do something about it. Now consider that your attention is being withdrawn from at roughly that rate, and almost nobody treats it like a loss. Notifications, infinite feeds, algorithm-fed outrage, the average person absorbs an enormous number of tiny interruptions daily, and each one has a cost that never shows up on a bank statement. Here's why it matters financially. A distracted, mentally fatigued brain makes worse decisions. Research on decision fatigue consistently shows that the more mental noise you're processing, the weaker your self-control gets and the more impulsive your choices become, which is precisely the opposite of building wealth. People who quietly build wealth often look unusually disciplined from the outside. In reality, a lot of them aren't relying on willpower at all. They've just engineered an environment with less noise to resist in the first place. It's easier to make good decisions when you're not fighting 100 tiny battles for your attention every hour. Walk through any genuinely wealthy neighborhood and you'll notice something counterintuitive. The person who looks the richest often isn't. Most people's brains are trained from childhood to notice status signals, the car, the logo, the watch. Quietly wealthy people train themselves to notice something almost invisible instead. Who owns things versus who's renting the appearance of success? Equity, cash flow, a stake in something that grows. This isn't just a moral point about materialism, it's a practical one about where your brain directs its attention. What you consistently admire shapes what you consistently pursue. If your radar is tuned to spot expensive things, you'll orient your life around acquiring expensive things. If it's tuned to spot ownership, you'll orient your life around acquiring ownership. Same brain, completely different target. Plenty of people stay busy for years without moving financially forward even slightly. Full calendars, packed schedules, constant activity, and yet the bank balance looks the same as it did 3 years ago. The reason is simple once you see it. Your brain rewards activity, not results. Checking boxes feels productive whether or not the boxes actually matter. But wealth tends to come from a small number of high-leverage actions, not a large number of busy ones. 10 hours answering low-value emails can create almost nothing. One focused hour building a skill that raises your income for a decade can create enormous compounding value. A useful filter here: before doing something, ask whether it will matter a year from now. Most of what fills a typical day fails that test completely, and that's fine. Most things aren't supposed to matter in a year. The problem is only when none of your effort is going toward the things that do. Everyone's heard of delayed gratification. Almost nobody understands why it's genuinely hard. Your brain isn't malfunctioning when it craves something now instead of more later. It's running ancient software. For most of human history, a reward you could get immediately was a reward you could actually count on. A reward promised for later might never arrive at all. That wiring made sense for thousands of years. It makes considerably less sense in a world engineered entirely around instant delivery, one-click purchases, and same-day everything. The practical shift is to change the question you're asking, not what would feel good right now, but what would feel good if I got to feel it again and again for years. A purchase gives you one hit of satisfaction. An asset can pay you back on a schedule for decades. People who build lasting wealth tend to get quietly excellent at choosing the second kind of reward, even when the first kind is sitting right in front of them. We are drowning in financial content, podcasts, videos, threads, hot takes, and somehow people feel more confused than ever, not less. The problem was never a lack of information. It's that most people consume financial knowledge the exact same way they consume entertainment. Watch it, feel briefly smarter, forget it, move to the next thing. Nothing actually gets installed. Quiet wealth tends to come from applying a small amount of information repeatedly, not collecting an enormous amount of information passively. Understanding how compounding actually works once, deeply, is worth more than 100 scrolling headlines about the market. A simple rule that helps: for every chunk of time spent consuming financial content, spend roughly equal time applying one piece of it, adjusting a real number, opening a real account, making one real decision. Knowledge that never gets used doesn't compound, it just accumulates as noise. If you've caught yourself in 2 or 3 of these already, drop a comment with which ones hit hardest. It genuinely helps me know what to cover next. We've got 5 habits left, and the next one might be the single biggest reason people underestimate how wealth actually gets built. One of the biggest reasons people give up on building wealth is that their brain is built to evaluate single events, not long curves. One workout, one investment, one book. None of these feel life-changing in isolation, so the brain quietly concludes they're not worth continuing. But wealth essentially never comes from a single event. It comes from a shape, a curve that looks completely flat for a long time, and then, seemingly out of nowhere, bends upward fast. Saving $50 once changes nothing. Saving consistently for a decade while it compounds changes everything. The frustrating part is that the curve looks identical to nothing is happening for most of its length. That's exactly the stretch where most people quit, right before the part where it would have started looking obvious. People who stay wealthy long-term have usually made peace with that invisible stretch, not because they're more patient by nature, but because they've seen the shape of the curve before and know what's coming. Notice how a raise feels incredible for about 6 weeks, and then it just becomes normal. That's a well-documented psychological pattern. Humans adapt shockingly fast to improved circumstances. The bigger apartment becomes the baseline. The nicer car becomes invisible. The brain resets and starts scanning for the next upgrade.
This creates a trap. Income rises, but the feeling of financial freedom never actually arrives because lifestyle is rising at exactly the same speed. People who quietly build wealth break this loop on purpose. When income goes up, they let their investment contributions go up right alongside it, not necessarily their spending. This doesn't mean living like a monk forever. It means upgrades happen deliberately as a choice instead of automatically as a reflex. The strange result, from the outside, these people often look less impressive than their income would suggest. On paper, in the account that actually matters, they're miles ahead. Humans are wired to compare themselves to others. It's an old survival mechanism for understanding your place in a group. Social media has taken that ancient wiring and turned the volume up to 11, a constant stream of other people's vacations, purchases, and highlight reels. The problem is that visible success and actual financial health are frequently two completely different things. Someone can look wealthy while drowning in debt. Someone else can look completely ordinary while quietly sitting on a genuinely strong balance sheet. People who build real wealth tend to track private numbers instead. Savings rate, debt paid down, net worth trend, skills gained. None of that makes an interesting post. All of it is a far better predictor of your actual future than anything that gets likes. Applause doesn't pay bills, and validation doesn't compound. The people around you shape your financial instincts more than almost anything else, and it happens quietly, without anyone forcing an opinion on you. Your brain just absorbs whatever feels normal in your environment. If spending is treated as entertainment by everyone around you, that starts to feel normal. If everyone's constantly upgrading their life, that starts to feel normal too. The reverse also works. Spend time around people, in person, in books, in podcasts, in communities, who talk about building things, solving problems, and creating value, and your brain starts noticing different opportunities entirely. You don't need wealthy friends specifically. You need inputs that expand what you believe is actually possible. A huge number of financial turning points start with a simple, quiet realization. I didn't know people thought about it this way. Once that door opens, decisions start shifting on their own. The last habit ties every other one together. Most people approach wealth backward, chasing the outcome directly. More money, more investments, more freedom. Those goals aren't wrong, but lasting wealth is usually a byproduct of something else, becoming genuinely useful to other people. The market, in almost every form, rewards people who solve real problems, who save others time, reduce friction, or provide a skill that's actually hard to find. The more valuable you become to other people, the more opportunities tend to find you without you chasing them down. That doesn't mean everyone ends up wealthy. It means wealth stops being the sole target and starts being a natural side effect of getting better at things that matter. Every habit on this list, underneath the surface, is really about the same thing: rewiring how your brain handles money, attention, patience, and decisions, the actual machinery that produces financial outcomes over time. None of these 12 habits are flashy. None of them promise an overnight transformation. That's sort of the point. Quiet wealth is rarely built through one dramatic decision. It's built through thousands of small, boring, repeated ones that compound over years into something that eventually looks like luck from the outside. The most encouraging part is that none of this requires a special starting point. These are learnable patterns, not personality traits you're born with, and most of them can start today with the very next paycheck or the very next purchase. If this gave you even one idea you're actually going to use, that's what makes these worth making. So consider subscribing. It genuinely helps this channel reach more people looking for the same thing. And before you go, out of these 12, which one are you starting with? Tell me in the comments. See you in the next one.